Hey. Welcome to another episode of the Event Mavericks in Meenamma's Corner. Today we have with us someone whom I would like to introduce as an inspiration to your own Meenamma. There are several people in life that you meet. Sometimes we walk similar paths, but we never meet or hold hands. But somewhere in the world, there is a universal law that says you will meet one day. And wow, what a way will you meet. This afternoon, I'm so happy to introduce to you, in his own words, Brian Tellis. Listen to me. Brian Tellis is a pioneer in the events, experiential, and entertainment industry. With a career that spans over 3 decades, he co-founded Fountainhead Promotions and Events, one of India's most successful experiential marketing agencies. He's also a founder, being a member of EMA, where he served as its president for 2 terms. With a passion for performing arts, Brian is an accomplished MC, musician, actor, and a radio jockey, having hosted and anchored shows since the inception of FM radio in India, way back 1993. Currently, Brian is a consultant for the Aditya Birla Group and the founder of Radio Active Ventures, which launched the Chinwag Collection, a podcast that explores the world of media, arts, and entertainment, and the Indian School of Protocol, which designs and conducts courses on soft skills, corporate ethics, and corporate etiquette and professional development. Brian has sat on the prestigious jury of the Cannes Festival, Channel V, and the MTV Music Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, in my words, Meenamma presents a show host par excellence, a passionate performer, a well-known voice-over specialist, a pioneering radio jockey, an event business pioneer, India's most sought-after event consultant today, and above all, put your hands together for Bandra's blue-eyed boy, Brian Tellis.
You are most kind. You are most kind. What can I say?
It's lovely to have you with me, Brian, in this candid corner. So tell us, Mr. Tellis, how it started for you. How was life when it started, and how did Brian realize that he was here to tell us a story?
Well, I'm a Bandra boy, like you said. I grew up here in this fantastic suburb of Bandra, and I'm very fortunate because growing up in Bandra, I was exposed to the arts while doing my academics, while studying, while doing my college. I was constantly exposed to the arts, be it music, be it singing, be it theater, also sports, actually. So I was kind of encouraged, not just by people around me, but by the environment to actually do a lot more than just academics. Academics, incidentally, wasn't one of my favorite things to do. But that's how it all started, growing up in a suburb that actually encouraged you to indulge yourself, encouraged you to be yourself. And then that led to very many things, specifically, like you mentioned, a bit of theater, a bit of singing, and I've done various things. I can get lost in storytelling because a whole host of things happen, but I was clear that one had to put bread on the table. So, I also started off my professional career, and I decided very early in life that I would do things I enjoy, that I would do things that I was comfortable doing, and not be a conformist. So, pardon me indulging myself a little bit. I've always believed in being who I am first, and hopefully, that would make sense to the journey. And it did, actually, pretty much, give or take.
Brian, we belong to a generation where we say that we are worth our weight in gold. I truly believe that you and I grew up at a time when everything was opening up, including the wild, wild world of entertainment, and the door was still closed, and we did not know how to open that door. But I still remember 1992 when we started Razzmatazz, people would ask me, what the hell are you doing? You're a scientist, and where are you? But I want to give you a date that might ring a bell for you as something very important, a year. Let me take you to August 5th. 1993, and then to December 1993. What did it mean to you, Brian?
Well, sometime middle 1993, me and a couple of my very dear friends who were pretty much in the airline and aviation business were spending a lot of time doing events for the respective airlines we worked for. And like I said, even growing up to that phase, we were very involved in the performing arts. And so we kind of used to meet pretty often, to do everything mom and dad said not to do. And while we were doing that, we'd kind of exchange notes uh, and follow what our instincts drove us to. 15th of August, 1993 is something that makes a whole lot of sense to me because it was the first day that FM radio hit the airwaves. And I was extremely privileged to go on air from day one. It was very, very early days of radio. Yeah, in fact, the launch of FM. And at that time, the frequency still exists, but there was just one frequency, 107.1. And there were various slots. And I was on a uh, morning slot, a kind of wasn't called the breakfast show at that time, but it was a morning slot. And initially, we started off, recording it. And if I tell you where we'd record, you'd have a smile on face. We'd record it, in a friend's bedroom. And of course, there was a semi-professional studio on the other side of town. But we didn't miss anything at that time. We were operating from the heart, really. So yeah, August 15, 93 was when we kicked off FM radio in the country. December 93 is when we decided, the three of us, like I said, decided that we would, since we were already doing stuff in the experiential space, or what was then the event space for our respective organizations, and we liked what we were doing, we decided that we would kind of give birth uh, to an effort that went in the direction of organizing events. And we did so. We of course formalized it only in Feb 95, but the work started from December 93. And we did a few unofficial kind of events in the interim between December 93 and Feb of 95, but we didn't put the name out yet. It was December 95 when we formally uh, decided to launch it, and in Feb we formalized it and gave birth to Fountainhead.
Fountainhead. That takes you back to my favorite author. It's time when all of us, bourgeois intellectuals thought we were reading Ayn Rand for the right reasons. But you made the dream come true, isn't it? Life is what you do while you are planning for it, is what our friend John Lennon had left back a legacy for. You and I belong to the generation of the three idiots. I remember when we were growing up, we were either doctors or, we were engineers, and our parents were very clear on who we have to be. But you and I drifted away, isn't it? Like little logs. We ran away into the waters. We meandered through the storms. And when you keep saying I'm an airline boy, tell us that story.
Well, I love travel, and like I said earlier, I had made up my mind to do things I love, and so I decided to try and get into the airline business because it allowed for you to travel. And I had a funny old thing because I joined, the GSA for Pan American back in the day in accounts and finance, and then they figured I talked too much for my age and size, so they moved me to sales. And then I got an offer from Air Canada that was down the corridor in the Oberoi back then, and I rejoined in accounts and finance in Air Canada. And they again there as well felt I talked too much for my age and size, so they moved me to sales. So I did time with the GSA for Pan American, I did time for Air Canada, and then I did time for Air France. It was a wonderful 8 to 10 years of my life where I traveled one hell of a lot. I met a whole lot of people because, like I said, I was in the department of sales and a bit of marketing, so, and finance, of course. So it was, uh, it was exciting times because travel was not a privilege. International travel was not a privilege that was easily enjoyed by one and all. Also, you did mention about scientists and or doctors and all of that. And I remember growing up, if you couldn't be any one of those, you were considered a loser. And
True.
it is one of the things that didn't go down well with me. Right off the get go, I was a big skeptic about that. Why does one have to be a doctor or an engineer or a scientist, with due respect to you, to be, to leave a mark? I can do what I love doing, and God willing, I'm good at what I do. More importantly, I could be a happy person and leave a mark on society around me. So I was one of those early stubborn people who was very clear that I wanted to the best I could, live life on my terms. Way easier said than done. Way easier said than done. So I do not wish to imply that there were no challenges, there were no ups and downs. There were. But hey, if life were a breeze, it would be damn boring, man. So with those challenges came the proverbial ups and downs, and you grew as a person. Your grit levels increased, and the likes. So yeah, I mean, the airline business was all about travel, was all about sales and marketing on the professional front. It was about traveling not just for the sake of reaching and seeing new geographies, but meeting people from across the world, because we tend to be cocooned in the country we live in or the city we live in. And when you actually have the privilege of travel, be it to other states or cities, or even better, to other geographies by way of other countries, you get exposed to various cultures. You get exposed to various other languages, other ways of life, which is a very, very interesting and serious form of education. Education that no institutes offer you. It's the education on life, on people, on languages, on cuisines, on new geographies, so things like that. I look back on, and I really cherish the airline days for all of the things I just mentioned.
And were the airline clients also your first clients who trusted you and invested in you and Fountainhead?
Yeah, I mean, we started because that was the area that we were strong in. So when we did start Fountainhead, like I said, December 93, but formalized in Feb of 95, all three of us were airline/aviation people. So that was the first industry we hit. And we were already, like I mentioned, doing stuff within the industry. So, we started to do events for the airline industry. I'll never forget, one of the downsides was I was anchoring a show for, I won't get into the details of which airlines and stuff, and I couldn't say no to it. I'd said yes. And as a consequence of sticking to my commitment of anchoring a show for an airline, I missed the Michael Jackson concert
Oh
in
no, that
in
is so
Mumbai.
sad.
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, it's not all up, up, up. There are downs, there are good days, there are not such good days. I'll never forget coming back home to family, and man, swallowing that was a tough one. But yeah, I mean, so we started off our event management, so to speak, with the aviation industry and the airline industry. And then, of course, we obviously, being who we were in the airlines, were exposed to clients of various industry shapes, sizes. So we then slowly started to, work on that, on those aspects or on that area. And one thing led to another. Incredible journey.
Your stairway to heaven, if I might say, uh, has so many beautiful steps. Music is the first step, I think, that you walked up on, and thereby you went to doing the theater, the experience of acting and role play. Then you went on to hosting. From there you resurrected yourself as an event manager, as CEO, founder of a company. The journey was step by step by step. Now there are so many young people who are watching us who think it's very easy to be event managers. In fact, some people come to me with their children and say, "Ma'am, if you don't mind, my child didn't get into the engineering college, so maybe an event management job or an event management career would be a good option as a second thought, and my blood would boil. I'm sure you've also gone through that, when people thought that it was easy to do an event because, from donkey's years, man has been an event manager of sorts. But Brian, in all of the roles that you've seen yourself, I here am just going to pick on that stage of life, the crossroads when you started the company, not knowing, because India did not have a recognized event management fraternity or a group of people that could say, yeah, this is what he's doing. How was that journey? Was it painful? I still remember looking into blank spaces and people would wonder why a scientist was asking for money to do stuff. How was it with you? How was the journey? Listen, youngsters, it wasn't easy for any of us. And here is the truth.
Yeah, it wasn't easy at all, to say the least, actually. And but we were convinced, we enjoyed that process, and we'd go out, and I think I've mentioned this before quite often in chats that I've had, that we'd often get asked, why do I need an event? Firstly, what is this event management that you guys do? And why would I need a special company to do it? I mean, I have an admin department in my organization that does all my events, and they were right. And then one had to explain to them that there is a lot more than just aggregating, suppliers, towards a common purpose. So slowly, from just being, should I call it, the creative glue in a supply demand situation, to then growing to become event planners, where we understood the brand a little more, understood where in its journey it was, who was the TG they were reaching out to, and actually be part of the think team or the think tank that actually helped the brand on its journey, albeit through creating experiences. So, from just being a creative glue or a conduit in a supply demand situation, moving on to be an event planner or an experiential planner, on to maybe some of us, hopefully a whole load of us, on to being strategists for a brand. And when I say of a brand, that's just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the consumer. Back in the day, we never considered consumer spend. And hence, most events, were created for a brand. And back in the day, we'd always be rooted through the advertising agency, because advertising in its conventional sense was far more acceptable than experiential management, or what was then event management. So climbing over that little fence was not easy as well. But coming back to where I was, from just servicing brands and giving its journey meaning, we moved over to actually aggregating community, looking at the consumer side of things, because as we went along, consumer spends increased, and there were social spends, consumer spends took on a whole new meaning. And so aggregating community, starting community festivals, festivals driven by either demographic or psychographic, or the arts. You could have a dance festival, you could have, we started something in Bandra called the Celebrate Bandra Festival back in 1993, 94, and it still exists. Save the pandemic, it still exists 30 years later. So, this is the joy of, from what was created for brands, or the focus on brands, to then focusing on brands and the community and the consumers. Because if you own a community, obviously the brands are going to want to talk to you. And then, of course, the other area was creating intellectual properties. So, you like Celebrate Bandra. Intellectual properties have various stakeholders in it, and I don't want to get into the micro because I'll get lost in storytelling or marketing storytelling. But you get my drift. So there are 3 or 4 stakeholders, one being the brands, the other being the consumer, not in order of priority, the third being the supply chain. Very importantly, sometimes we tend not to give enough importance to all our friends in the supply areas, our sound partners, our lighting partners, our technology partners, our infrastructural partners. These are guys or companies without whom we can't exist. And so it became a beautiful mix. Every effort became a beautiful mix of these four stakeholders, and the journey became more and more and more and more interesting as you went along.
How beautifully you said it. Event managers are the creative glue between the suppliers and the consumers. What a wonderful way to look at it, because you
Yeah.
have a whole lot of people struggling at different levels of the ecosystem, and here you are. The word manager makes you so powerful. It takes you to a different level of giving experiences to a whole set of your brothers and sisters. And thank you so much for acknowledging the fact that the guys behind the scene make us what we are today. I would like to talk about Orange Entertainment. I was very amused and amazed at what you did with your passion for music and drama. Orange Entertainment happened, Orange Juice Entertainment, right? And then you had the Blues Fest. You had a theater fest, was right. You celebrated Bandra. You married brands, like you said, and you stayed ahead. When everybody was getting into the space of events, you took us to experiences. So how beautifully we transcended from being event managers to experiential managers. So tell us that story of when events became experiences for the country India, for all of us sitting here so proud that we are growing by the minutes.
Yeah, like I said, the business of development, of brands is a journey. And that journey is based on the strength of relationship between the stakeholders. And I don't just mean between event managers and brands, like I said, the various other stakeholders as well. And I think what's a wonderful way to do that is to create ongoing communication, ongoing projects between these three to four stakeholders. And it's a no brainer that if you create an intellectual property, that gives rise to potential relationships. I think one of the things that we at Fountainhead did, which was path breaking at that time, we got criticized for it. And sometimes when I talk about it in hindsight, over a few laughs, we still get questioned about why we did it. But we created IPs at that time blasphemously for the brand. The fashionable thing to do was to create an IP which you as an agency owned, which we also did. I mean, we did the One Tree Music Festival with Johnny Walker, and we did a couple of others. We did Celebrate Bandra, the first one that belonged to the residents of Bandra through the resident associations, etc., etc. But from a brand perspective, I think the two IPs that really stand out from an Orange Juice perspective were the ones we created for the Mahindra and Mahindra group and for the Aditya Birla group. The Mahindra and Mahindra group were looking at creating an emotional bridge between India and the southern states of America, keeping their businesses in mind. And we sat down with them and were figuring what it would take to create that emotional bridge between India and the southern states, the farming states of America. And what turned out was music after many discussions, and within music, the blues. And I'll never forget, a lot of people again looked at us quizzically, with that proverbial raised eyebrow saying, honestly, in India, English music is 2% and blues is 2% of 2%. So, I mean, we've seen stupid people, but how stupid are you all? Kind of thing. And I'm happy to say, that 13, 14 years on, the Mahindra Blues Festival is out there and is shining. And the decision we made, like I said, was to allow happily for the brand to own the IP. Think about it. If it was owned by Fountainhead, today Fountainhead doesn't exist anymore, and the IP wouldn't have existed anymore. But the beauty of it is we created it for the Mahindra and Mahindra group, and happily so, I must add again. And look at it today. It's alive, it's well, and we created arms for it, be it the radio arm or be it the digital arm and various others. I mean, I'm going to say on behalf of Mahindra and Mahindra that today it's almost blasphemous, right? It's like taking coal to Newcastle, as they say. The Mahindra Blues Festival actually goes to Chicago, to Buddy Guy's bar. And as of last year, it goes to New York as well. So, I mean, that's how wonderful the IP is. On the other hand, we created a theater IP for the Aditya Birla Group, Adyam, the theater festival, because as a group, the Aditya Birla Group is very steeped in culture and the arts, and they wished, to do something that would go beyond the business verticals. You know, who is the brand? To give the brand a personality, the mother brand, and it's only the beginning of the story. So they do a whole lot of other things, but this was to give the performing arts its rightful place in society. And so we started Adiyam, the theater festival, which is still running in its eighth year now, and running well, I must add, where we create new products that we put out in the theater space into the market, and we have again various arms that represent it, that keep it alive in the minds and hearts of the people. So these have been wonderful steps that we've taken in Orange Juice's journey. Orange Juice was a really happy, progressive part of Fountainhead's, workforce, so to speak. One of the brands that really, really did us proud.
Yes, Brian. I think the event management, the experiential space is growing, galloping ahead. And I think in the next 2 years, we are going to make such a difference to, the face of every country. I think event management has come to stay as part of a very important chapter in the book of management. But you and I will always be known as those who wrote the first chapter, isn't it? I often heard you talk about being a classic rock and a rock fan yourself, about John Lennon and his story. Many people think that, earning those bucks, growing in life, having all those materialistic goods that an event management career goes with is more important than creating yourself and your happiness. So, for our young ones out there, you can be happy anywhere, but listen to what Brian took as an example for his happiness quotient. I love that story, Brian. Just say it again. John
Yeah,
Lennon's story.
yeah, I mean, John Lennon, wonderful guy. He two things. One, he said life is what happens to you while you're making all those grandiose plans. So the whole idea was live in the moment. Obviously you got to have your journey mapped out and your destination kind of mapped out, because otherwise there wouldn't be purpose and direction. But he says never fail to enjoy the journey on a day to day, a week to week, a month to month, a year to year perspective, because that is life. Your destination may change. What is enough? Is a one bedroom, a two bedroom, a five bedroom, a villa? What is enough? Is a car, which car, how many cars enough? So these things keep changing, but are you happy on the journey? And what makes you happy, right? So these are things that one has to focus on. I was very clear that the performing arts makes me happy. So even while we went through what we did, building brand Fountainhead or brand Oranges, I kept my passion alive, my passion of radio, my passion of anchoring, my passion of musicals or theater alive, because that's really what makes me who I am. That's really what makes me happy. The rest is manifestations of my happiness. If I'm a happy guy, I'll continue to produce stuff. I'll continue to be relevant to the world around me, and more importantly, relevant to myself. So I never fail to take that proverbial long, hard look in the mirror. I must admit, though, that I'm a little more organized now than I was earlier. So I'm uh, I'm a bit of a planner now over the years, and so I map, who I want to be over the next 3 years, and then, I kind of, to the best I can, try and meet with my own expectations. But it's not just about what puts food on the table. It's really what puts smile on heart as well. If you do something you love, you end up loving what you do. That's a cliche. And if you love what you do, the universe conspires to put everything in place, including food on the table. I firmly believe that. I had a chat with someone back in 1992, or was it 1993, early 93, about starting this event management company. And he told me, and I was telling him that it's a bit of a worry. I had just had my second son at that time. He was an infant. And he told me, don't worry, man, if you do something that you're passionate about, the rest will fall in line. And truly, that's what happened. Like I said, no free lunches. You got to put shoulder to wheel and you've really got to work hard. But I do believe that you can keep realigning yourself to the world around you. Now it's post Fountainhead. And like you very kindly said while introducing me, there are other things that keep me busy, but they're all passion points. I've upped the ante on my radio presence. Happily, I must add again, I've started the Indian School of Protocol, which is a training program under Radioactive Ventures, where I talk and train in soft skills. So things like, I feel there's a huge gap, self presentation and communication and public speaking and, in social skills, dining etiquette, teamwork, leadership, creativity, collaboration. These are all key words that we tend to take for granted. So I spend a lot of time curating exercises and professionally kind of helping, whether it's individuals or organizations, on their road to, on their journey. So, I mean, these are things one has to constantly be alive. But I'd like to throw in one more thought. Very often we don't really do what we in technological speak called a SWOT analysis. And I think we need to do it as individuals or as collectives or companies. I mean, you must have a vision and a mission. And very often we work backwards and we say, I want to be this. And then we work backwards and figure who we are. My humble submission is actually figure who you are first, individually and collectively as a company. And then don't drop your standards, but then set your benchmarks, then set your destination. So what's your vision? What's your mission? Then, of course, the pillars, on which, your purpose rests. Because unless you have pillars, you're never going to be able to curate your journey to the best you can. So these are things, of course, these are slightly longer conversations, but this is stuff. Or even communication, like we're doing just now. I have the Chinwag Collective, which I believe, the spoken word is something that is extremely important. So the podcast, like we're doing just now, is something that I focus on as well within the Chinwag Collective. So these are things that I've used the spoken word in various avatars, as you very kindly mentioned, right through my life. But I'm giving it purpose, further purpose here, in the podcast area and things like that. Or whether it's anchoring shows, I take my anchoring very seriously. Very often people think that anchoring, I've actually got asked that, if you're an entrepreneur, how come you're still anchoring shows? And I've got, what does one have to do with the other? And I'm genuinely asking. The implication is that it is below one's dignity to compare or anchor a show if you're an entrepreneur. And I don't get it. I still don't get it. You don't have to lower your dignity if you're an anchor, or you don't have to have a swollen head if you're an entrepreneur, either which way. So there are some things that I just don't get, like being a conformist. Yeah, you got to be that because look at so and so, he or she is that. Why do I need to conform? I am Meenakshi. I have certain strengths. I have certain passion points. I have certain opportunities that I feel will present itself. Why can't I be Meenakshi? Why do I have to be A, B, or C? I mean, these are basic questions that one needs. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little philosophical here, but I think it's very important to be secure in who you are. Obviously, learn from your mistakes. There is no success, without failure, as they say. And failure can do two things to you. It can consume you and get you down, or you can use failure, and never fail to say this, to never do it again. And hence it becomes actually a moment of strength, a moment of learning. And I never tire of saying these things over and over again because they are truisms that have resonated deeply with me.
Wonderful. For all you young people out there, between the two people you're looking at, there is more than 30 years of experience of Indian industry of events. Both of us are proud to have traveled that path and made it easy for you fellows. It wasn't easy for us. We had to explain what we were doing to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. But today, it is so easy for you to say that you would love to be in part of one of the most versatile professions. But believe me, neither the gentleman next to me nor I have an expiry date. Our shelf life is forever because we resurrect ourselves in different forms every time we come to the crossroads of our life. I still remember come Corona, and all of us thought that it was the end of the world for us. But some positive thinkers, like all of us, knew that this was just passing time and we had to grow into digital people. You use that word, physical plus digital. And in EMA, we're very proud that, all of us, you served in the term of president for two different terms. And we actually saw our brothers and sisters struggling, and we became digital beings. We actually got onto the digital media. Today, if Meenamma is staring at you through a screen, it's because this woman who's middle-aged refuses to grow up and wants to still do her stuff. And that is what she likes to do, that is talk. So what do you think, how at every stage of our life, when you think you're beaten, a new door can open? I think, Brian, you're a great example of this. You've used your skills, your talents, and your planning, your strategy, and give those 3 or 4 points that you want the younger generation to know, because we are the ones who walked that path.
I think, thank you. I think the first thing that I would recommend that everyone does is, like I mentioned earlier, just do an introspection. Figure out who you are, figure out where your strengths lie, figure out, importantly, where your weaknesses lie. Understand that that is you, and you've got to circumvent the weaknesses. You've got to use opportunities that exist in the market, that kind of work for you. And of course, be aware of the threats, as I said earlier. So one is understand who you are. Two is never stop indulging in your passion points. When we were growing up, I mean, it was often said that your job is your job, it's your 9 to 5, but the rest of the things you do are your hobbies. The word hobbies meant only if and when you had spare time, if at all, then you indulged in your hobbies. And I disagreed with it then, and I even more strongly disagree with it now. Those are passion points. I don't know what hobbies means, but they are passion points. They are things that make you you. So I will continue to indulge myself in what people call hobbies, but I call passion points, and I call an intrinsic part of me. Anchoring is an intrinsic part of me, right? I think hosting on radio is an intrinsic part of me. Music is an intrinsic part of me. Theater is an intrinsic part of me. And I refuse to let that go. And why? If I'm enjoying it, hey, you live with it. I don't want to be what Meenakshi is. I don't want to be what X or Y or Z. I want to be who I am. I want to do stuff that I enjoy. Yes. So you must be aware that, you've got to put the proverbial food on the table. So be aware of that. Don't lose yourself in passion to the extent that you're just doing stuff you enjoy, and there's no return on that investment financially and otherwise. You've got to map that. So that's the first thing. Continue to nurse and indulge in your passions, right? There are many things that one does in life, and one doesn't really map it. I'm a big believer of mapping yourself. You can do a 2-year mapping, you can do a 3-year mapping, you can do a 5-year mapping, but map yourself. Where are your ambitions, and what will it take to actually achieve what you want to achieve? Give it a timeline. You may go, I've gone horribly wrong with some, and I've gone reasonably right with some. You learn along the way. Like I said, if everything was perfect, life would be very, very boring. So I won't give you micro kind of, points, but the 3 large points is understand who you are, right? Never stop indulging in your passion points. Be good to the people around you, and the universe will conspire to be good to you. I'm sounding like a preacher man here, but it's important, both personally and professionally. It's important, man. Don't be afraid to say if you feel something is wrong, but there's a way to do it. You can say it in very, very, very many ways, show respect to people around you. And I think the rest falls in line, honestly, Meenakshi. I don't want to sound textbookish and give you the 10 points in 10 minutes that I normally, speak about. But broadly, this is it, where you follow your heart, but there is a format that helps you monitor who you wish to be and how far you've come in that journey. And of course, like you said, my favorite philosopher, John Lennon, said that there's an interesting story that his teacher, when he was a young boy, once asked the class, all of you write down what you would like to be when you grow up. And John Lennon's mother had always told him, apparently, you need to be happy, you need to be happy. And so he wrote on that piece of paper, when I grow up, I want to be happy. And the teacher actually asked him or told him and said, John, I don't think you've understood the question. And he looked up at her and said, ma'am, I don't think you've understood life. So
Nice.
yeah, I mean, it's really an iconic statement. It's something I hold on to. It's about, it's about being happy, but with a conscience and with an acceptance of what you need to do and what the returns on that effort should be.
See, happiness, the happiness quotient, the story. I want to ask you a question. I've been always wanting to know this. You create Fountainhead, it's your baby. You put it where it is on a pedestal where the world looks up and says, wow, what an Indian boy can do for, the excellence of events. And then you sell it out, you transfer it to somebody else, you stand by and clap while your company remains in somebody else's hand. How does that feel? The buy, operate, and transfer kind of a module. You did it so successfully, and being a Leo, you are an emotional being. How did that happen? You actually gave away and you sold away at the right time, but how does it feel that Fountainhead is there, but it is not yours? It was yours. You founded it. You can sit and watch the story as someone else
I
does
mean,
better.
yeah, me and my partners, spoke about it, uh, you know, for a long time, but we were clear that, we wished then to monetize it and to give it further life actually also because I believe in the power of collaboration. As I said to you unofficially when we were chatting before we went live, I believe in collaboration. We all believe in collaboration. And we believed that there were two aspects to the transaction. One would be to monetize some of the work we'd put in over then 25 years or thereabouts. And two is to take it to greater heights because, if you align with a global company, you give it fresh legs and or you give it fresh geography, from being an Indian company operating in India to being a truly global company. So there are pulls and there are pushes as well. Obviously there is the other emotional side that you spoke about, which is something that you kept close to your heart for all the right reasons for 25 years or however long, and suddenly not suddenly, but it doesn't belong to you anymore. That's not easy. But hey, you know what? Life isn't easy. I keep mentioning on this chat that I think one has to accept life as it is. It's not all happy chapters. You've got to give some to get some. Hopefully, you give less and you get more if you're aligned in the right direction and for the right reasons. So, I mean, it was an emotional journey for all of us at Fountainhead. Not easy, given circumstances, etc., etc., etc. But I think it made men of us, and every one of the stakeholders is now doing a fantastic job in the areas that they are involved in. And that's a true manifestation of how happy the journey was, how productive the journey was. Everyone, of course, one of our partners has passed, unfortunately, but the remaining partners are doing fantastically for themselves. So, I mean, that is true manifestation, right? Like I said, to answer your question, some of it is gratifying and happy, some of it is emotional and can be tough, but you've got to balance it. And when I, in hindsight, look back over my shoulder, like I said, I look and I can see a load of happy faces. Yeah.
True, true. You still have your finger in the pie. You still have that glass of wine overflowing in your hand. The Aditya Birla Group has deemed you fit, and there's nobody else who can be a consultant as you are to them because you've traveled the path with them. It's wonderful that you're able to impact. And today you're that guy whom we thought was the other guy, when we were trying to become event managers. You remember 34 years back, 32 years back, why would I give you my event? My guy would do it. But today you're in a position where you're a consultant with so much of experience, you know exactly what to give them at what time. So how does it feel today? Aditya Birla Group is indeed a wonderful place to be.
It truly is. It truly is. And I've had the privilege, or at Fountainhead, we've had the privilege, and I was driving that effort of working with many brands and conglomerates, and Aditya Birla Group was one such important conglomerate, and it was really exciting to work with them for those 25 plus years. But it was, so to speak, outside looking in. While we understood the brand and its various business arms and the likes, you can never understand it enough. Cut to now, when you're consulting, you're really looking at it from the inside looking in, or more likely from the inside looking in, and that's the exciting bit, where you're looking at the same brand slash brands that you looked at initially, slightly from the outside. Now you're looking at it even more
Part of the
from the
family.
inside, and it's a whole new revelation. You have certain perceptions, you have certain givens, right or wrong, in your mind, but now that you're working from the inside, you understand some of the pulls and pushes that you did not earlier. So that's what makes it really, really exciting, that it gives you a rounded perspective, so to speak. It gives you a wonderfully rounded perspective. So, I mean, that's the high point as far as I'm concerned about working with brands now, and especially the Aditya Birla Group. And they are wonderfully gracious. I can't even tell you. I mean,
Yes, yes.
they're a wonderful group, wonderfully gracious, and I'm eternally grateful for this opportunity.
Brian, India is the youngest country in the world. Our gray hair, the wrinkles on our face will deceive those who are watching us. We are young in our hearts. What is the valuable points that a person should have when they get into event management as a profession? I'm sure there are some college kids who are watching us and sending me questions. How do we know that we are worth being in the event management field? Are we fit to be here? Are there some qualities? I only know that I was mad and strayed away from my tribe and found myself in the loneliness of doing something. What would you say are those three qualities that the young man or the young woman has to be with us?
I don't know about three qualities, but one must understand that, being in the experiential business, as the name suggests, you have to be open and imaginative about experiences. It's not highly curated like very many other professions. So you have to have a fertile mind. You have to have an open mind to what possibilities exist. One. Two is, you have to be really, really knowledgeable about what the world outside is wanting and consuming. As you rightly said, India is the youngest country and tastes are changing, I'm tempted to say, radically. What
Yes.
used to happen as change over 20 years, then started to happen as change over 5 years, now happens as change annually. The change happening every year and a half, is equal to what happened in 5 or 10 years earlier. So, evolution is happening really, really quickly. That's the one thing. You have to be aware of the ecosystem. The second thing that I believe is, we are now living in a world of collaboration. So I think that's a key word that's used often, but I don't think understood well enough, even by me. I'm not finger pointing here, but I think we're reaching a stage, on the general in the general scope of professionalism, where collaboration is assuming newer and greater effectiveness. Initially, we were a little wary about, if I collaborate, I'm sharing the spoils, or we were insecure about, if I collaborate with that agency, they may steal this and they may whatever, whatever, whatever. I think that insecurity is something that we have to get over, and we have to learn how to truly collaborate, not just say it. So the first thing is actual awareness of the world around us, both from a brand perspective and a consumer perspective. And the second thing, really important, is collaboration. And the third, I think, is a combination of interactivity and creativity. I mean, creativity is relevant. I always say that creativity is as relevant as its effectiveness. Let's put a man on Mars. It's so creative. Yeah, sure. But to what effect? Why are you putting that man on Mars? Right? Why are you creating that trip, potential trip to Mars? Creativity is great, but it must have higher purpose. It must have higher meaning. It must have higher effectiveness. So creativity is very, very important. And I think heightened creativity only happens through interactivity. So, I mean, these are the 3 points if you wanted three. Interactivity, marrying creativity, I think, uh, collaboration, and actual general knowledge. And I say general, I don't mean to wash it down. I mean pertinent general knowledge, both on the brand and the consumer side.
Wonderful, Brian. I think we're coming to the end of this conversation because of time, but we can go on and on. It's almost like I found a soulmate whom I feel like I'm just going back on my journey, and all those who are watching were with us through those years, those easy years, the difficult years. The party's still on. You guys are still ready to party, isn't it? But Ujwal, my production person, my director, has some questions lined up. And Ujwal, while you get your questions together, are you there? Oh, yes, he's here already. Life is an event. I always say this. All of us, different stages of life, we celebrate. Some of us celebrate our pleasure, some of us celebrate our pain. But it's only when we are on the path of that event we realize that we are here only from that womb to tomb session. So why not make every day worth living by making it good for somebody else too? And we are indeed great people who help others make great events together, great memories for them forever. Yes, the blue tick, you may go on with your questions if you have any now.
Thank you. It has been really wonderful. And there are lots of listeners around Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I have three questions which I have picked up. And first is from Anukul. Anukul is from Lucknow. He's an aspiring RJ. And his question is, what is missing in today's radio space? And any suggestion from your side to bring back the old glory days of radio?
Oh, that's a really interesting and pertinent question. Radio internationally is not just about music. Radio internationally is also about the spoken word. And I think in India, one of the things missing from FM radio or AM radio is the spoken word, okay, which of course, fortunately, the digital side of our lives is bringing that to the table. But going back to radio and what is missing, the second bit about radio that is missing, that I think, is, we often tend as radio stations or as jocks to put out what we like or what we think the consumer will like. It's extremely important, as is the case in anything else we do, to figure out who the consumer is and what the consumer wants. So I think it's important to actually put out what the consumer wants. It may not be what I like all the time. I grapple with this all the time because I'm passionate about music. I'm passionate about storytelling. But is it what the consumer wants? I invite consumers all the time on almost every show to write into me, or kind of WhatsApp me, whatever it is, and tell me what he or she or they are looking for. So it's actually meeting the expectations of the consumer. The third thing about radio, and I think we get it wrong very often, I'm generalizing, is radio is a one-on-one medium. It's not, hey, how you guys doing out there? No, it's about how are you this evening, Meenakshi. I might not mention her name, obviously, because there are many hundreds, thousands, lakhs, I don't know, of people listening. But it's about how are you doing this evening. I do hope your drive back from your place of work is great, or if you're sitting at home chilling, I hope you're rested enough. Don't forget, you're communicating one-on-one. You may be speaking to many hundreds or thousands of people on the other end, but it's a one-on-one medium. I mean, I could go on and on a few other things that radio is missing, but India is a land of, again, diverse cultures. So what works in one state or one city doesn't necessarily work in the next. So you've got to be adept, you've got to be agile on your content and what you put out and when you put it out. But yes, and of course you have to embrace technology. So the one thing I would do, and radio stations are doing it actually, is to marry frequency modulation or FM to digital. So can I listen on radio as well as digital? There are many complications when you talk about music, because there are, licenses, and we know this in the experiential industry, all about music licensing and the rest. We won't go there because that will take another 1 hour to discuss. But yeah, these are the few things that I do believe will do radio a huge one if we can manage to implement it.
Brian, I still remember carrying a cassette player to the U1 studio, All India Radio. When we started, I did a show on the Beatles, and we had to actually get everything ready on a cassette player. Times have changed, isn't it? You guys have the world, and
Yeah.
just enjoy the magic.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think, Anukul, you have got your points and suggestions. You are an aspiring RJ, and so I think these points will definitely help you to create your own identity in the space of RJ when you are going to speak with the world. Next question is from Sheetal from Ahmedabad. She's from the event industry, and she's asking that in today's event management world, is it wise to get into a specific stream of event from the very beginning, or is it important to go and be at the space and learn everything and become a jack of all trades and then all find out your niche?
That's one of the easiest questions to answer. Never jack of all trades and then move to who you actually are, which is why I keep saying, I mean, there are 4 or 5 areas you could get into. You could get into mandated events from brands. You could get into creating intellectual properties. You could get into that whole travel and tourism, the MICE area of events, all of those areas. You could get into consumer aggregation through intellectual property. So there are various areas. I mean, the social space is bubbling over. I mean, you're talking about birthdays and marriages and stuff like that. Comes with its own challenges of organized and unorganized. And I don't think it's our purview to go there. But I think you need to do a bit of introspection, whoever you are. We were clear in Fountainhead that there was one area that we didn't want to get into because we were not adept at it. I mean, unfortunately, we can't be everything to everyone. So as an individual entrepreneur and as an organization, every organization has its strengths and unfortunately has its weaknesses as well. So as I've said for the third time on this chat, do a diligence on it. Look at who you are. Look at where your strengths lie. Build on your strengths. I'm not saying don't diversify. I'm not saying that. But I do believe that costs should follow revenues. And that can only happen if you do stuff you're good at first and get revenues coming in, and then follow it with, costs that create newer areas of expertise or newer areas of business potential. It's a very macro thing, but unless I'm having a specific conversation, I wouldn't be able to give you examples. But to answer the question very clearly, analyze yourself, and as an individual and an organization, get into areas of strength, take it to a certain level, and when you feel you're well on your way, you're pretty adept at that, and you can afford the luxury of a little mind space and workspace to diversify, then diversify.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for this. And Sheetal, I hope it answers your query, and you will be able to do great in your journey in the field of event management. Now, the third and the last question is from Rahul Sunkara. Rahul Sunkara is from Mumbai. He's again into the event business. And his question is, predominantly post-COVID, the virtual event space has grown manifold. So what is your take on the virtual event space, how it is changing in the present time, and the role of technology in event
So
business.
I think technology has always played a role in our business. I can remember from, let's say, the airline days. I'm going to give you slightly silly examples, but maybe Meenakshi will remember. We would send telegrams to each other to
Yes.
different states about bookings and stuff like that. From telegrams, telexes, it went to telephone calls. Today it's FaceTime. Technology has taken us, to different places in leaps and bounds. The point is, technology will, in my estimation, never replace human connect and human intellect.
Yeah.
Okay, so the role that technology plays is one of augmentation. Technology needs to be embraced with both hands, adopted with mind and heart, and must help you achieve what you want to achieve. It won't work by itself. There is the human element, the intellectual element, the personal element that cannot be replaced by technology. So, technology, much required, needs to be embraced with both hands, but can only add value to who you are and what you hope to do. One does not replace the other. Accent on does not replace the
Yes.
other. So you must have your plans, your mindset firmly in place, and then figure how technology can help you reach that in double quick time. Like I said, what change that happened in 20 years started to happen in 10 and in 5, and now probably every year and a half. So
True.
evolution is happening at a much, much, much faster rate. And so, yes, we need to be on our feet. We need to be constantly on it. But yes, to answer your question, technology will never replace human effort. It will augment it.
Uh, I guess technology being the enabler and the role of playing as a catalyst to enhance the whole experience is the most is the way forward, and that's how we should look at it.
Yeah.
And what more can be a wonderful example? Two of the greatest minds of in from the event industry speaking together in a digital technology enabled platform and sharing their experiences. So now technology can bring everything together, but the experiences of these years that you are sharing today, no one can bring it to the table. It's a complete personalized way of understanding and also presenting things. Thank you very much, and I will again go back to the back seat, and you please continue and take forward the discussion.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Aju. I still remember the days 34, 33 years ago when I had these little babies on my lap. I was writing my dissertation for my postdoctoral work, and I would keep looking at the telephone, waiting for a client to call for the razzmatazz to start in my life. All of us have gone through it, so many years of having nothing, but we had it all. Today, we have it all and we have much, much more opportunity. But do we have it? Is the question. With me is a man who has stood the test of time, a man who has matured like wine. And most of us in the field do not know that, to be an event manager, you just have to have one quality, and that is the madness to be yourself. Life is a school. All of us are teaching and learning every day. Today, I could be the teacher. Tomorrow, you could teach me much more, you young people out there. But in bringing this Event Maverick special with Brian Tellis, I was wondering, so much of energy. He is in the RJ space, an actor, he's a show personality, he is a person who's larger than life. But I see next to me a young, vulnerable little boy from Bandra who's willing to share his experiences. It's such a pleasure. You tell us like how it's always to be told. Thank you, Brian. And everybody who wants to reach Brian, check out on his master classes. Check out on all that he does on the social media because he's relevant yesterday, today, tomorrow, and forever. Thank you guys for being with me. And Brian, keep shining, keep inspiring. And remember, people like me look up to you as a spark of good hope. Thank you so much, my dear.
Thank you, Meenakshi. That is truly humbling. Thank you. Coming from you, I'll hold on to that. And like you said, I just wish to reiterate that I'm at that wonderful stage of life when I'm really happy to impart my learnings to people who are willing to kind of accept it and imbibe it. So happy to indulge. But thank you for having me on the chat. It's been truly wonderful, and I hope it has met expectations. Thank you again.
Thank you. And welcome to Event Management, little boys and girls. We're waiting for you.